So we're going to have a conversation now about community power, and we mean that in every sense of the term. And to lead that conversation, I'm really happy to bring forward somebody who has been such a pioneer in the field of sustainability for so long, going back to the early days when Ray Anderson was just getting the sustainability thing at Interface, helping the US GBC, US Green Building Council, become the powerhouse that it's become, working as the federal chief environmental officer for President Obama at the White House, and now leading an organization called Groundswell, which you'll hear about. To talk about this and lead this conversation, please join me in bringing to the stage the panel led by Michelle Moore.
Good morning, everybody. We are thrilled to be here with you this morning to talk about building community power. And I'm going to get kicked off what we hope will be an exciting and fast-moving panel by sharing a couple of statistics with you about energy inequity in America. So today, the poorest 20% of our neighbors in this country are paying the most for electricity. 10% or more of their entire household income going to keep the lights on. And in some places around America, that challenge is even more pronounced. In places like Baltimore, Maryland, where Groundswell does a tremendous amount of work, more than almost 13% of families living below the poverty line are paying $200 plus per month for electricity. And that's not just outrageous. From our perspective, that's a call to action. Because clean energy is a necessity, not a luxury. We're all in this together, and we can't afford the social cost of leaving our neighbors behind. So we're going to get this conversation started with Trenton Allen, who's the founder and CEO of Sustainable Capital Advisors, a thought leader and a banker of firsts. When he was at Citigroup almost 10 years ago, Trenton is responsible for doing the very first green bond deal in this country. So Trenton, one of the challenges that always comes up when we talk about energy inequity and economic equity and how to build it into the sustainability movement is how do we make finance and business models work for low and moderate income Americans? So get us started.
Sure. So let's just think about finance generally. I mean, finance generally is all about is the return greater than the perceived or the real risk in a transaction or a project? And so much of finance is about minimizing risk. And minimizing risk has led to the intended and unintended consequences of really leaving LMI, low moderate income communities, out of potentially clean energy projects. And so if we just think about solar as an example and think through sort of how solar gets financed and put together, you think about sort of the incentive structures. Incentives for solar are primarily provided through the tax code. So if you are a wealthy business, making lots of money, if you are a wealthy homeowner doing well, you will be able to write off the solar installations as part of your taxes. But if you are a low-income person who may not have as much income to write off, the benefits of those particular tax investments are not provided to you in the same manner. And so there's a disconnect there with who can participate and get the same value out of many of the incentives. Another way of thinking about it also is when you think through sort of who can apply for financing. Most of the financiers and investors look for long-term stable investors and counterparties on projects. That's municipalities and corporations. And we think back to the residential sector, we look for people who have high FICO scores as a proxy for whether they will be able to make those and pay those investments. We've set a bar in many places where 600 to 630 FICO score is a cutoff line for participation. So having that as a proxy, but really what we're talking about for community energy is really what's the proxy. The best proxy might be who pays their utility bills, not just what is captured within the realm of a FICO score. And so when we think about sort of how do we participate and create structures to have for greater participation of the entire community, we've set up systems that sort of make it more difficult for them to participate. And so we see one of the great opportunities in the world of community solar, where we're not looking at where a project is located, we're not thinking about where we have solar going on, single assets. We now can utilize landfills, farms, community assets to place solar and then have people subscribe and participate in projects. And by that way, we're looking at what is the strength of a pool as opposed to looking at what is the individual credit characteristics of individuals. And by looking at what is the strength of the pool, much like utilities do and utility financings are done around the country today, we can provide for greater access for more people, and we can also make sure that there is that the businesses that are involved in clean energy generally have more opportunities.
Thank you, Trenton. Now, Kimberly Lewis is a movement builder, and she is a minister. She built the world's largest sustainability conference in Greenbuild. She is one of the people at the helm of the Greening the Black Church movement and is the senior vice president who's also responsible for community engagement at USGBC. She's been at work for a decade, helping to bring more diversity to the sustainability movement as well. So Kimberly, Trenton has challenged us to put low and moderate income families at the center of our financial solutions. What have been the obstacles that have prevented us from being more successful as a sustainability community and bringing more diverse voices to the table?
Thank you, Michelle. Good morning, everyone. So I think for me, it is both a two-pronged challenge, but the future is always bright. As she said, being a minister, I like to think so progressively and positively about what obstacles can offer for solutions. And for us, the two-pronged barriers have been both internally for the movement as well as externally. When I think about internally and having walked this journey with USGBC, part of our success and our focus has been on really moving the top 20% of the marketplace. It is about leadership, the partnership and the collaboration of business and sustainability. And that has been our success in how we've focused. And we thought that the trickle-down effects would really begin to positively affect low and moderate families and communities. As I have walked this journey for 15 years, I've been waiting for the trickle-down effect. I've been waiting for the trickle-down effect, even in bringing more folks to the movement who can express and be a part of the energy, the excitement of what we've been doing every day to change lives. And so for me, when I think about internally and I think about who's at the council and who's in the movement, we're 90% homogenous. Mostly white communities, 55% male, and we're focused on the AEC community. So one of the things that I really began to focus in through Greenbuild, which has been our tent revival, it has been the place where people find inspiration, they're educated, and they also get good business done in that week. How do I bring diverse messages in? Folks in that can challenge us and can really create the opportunity and the setting for collaborative partnerships. At the council, we've been saying now partnership is the new leadership, and we can't be everything to everyone. So internally, I've been challenging us to collaborate in new spaces, and we need business to be a part of that solution with us. That's why I'm here in Verge 5 days before Greenbuild. For sure, the power in this room can be a part of that solution as well, but we have to be open to not be just thinking about our interest, but thinking about the minds, the needs of communities, and allowing us to listen and to hear what they need. That means they need to be present. That means when we look around this room, how do we engage and bring more folks in so that the conversations and the connections can be authentic and holistic to the needs? The second side of that barrier, which creates opportunities as well, Michelle spoke about the work that Groundswell is doing in Baltimore, and I'm a native Baltimorean. And I think about the challenges that have been happening both socially, economically, and we know the environmental movement addresses all of those things. There's been a lot of fragmentation out there. I always say to folks, the environmental justice movement is no different from the social justice movement. We've been talking and bringing together key thought leaders, and Dr. Mindy Full of Love says, when you talk about social issues, AIDS, violence, health issues, jobs, they're just symptoms. when we think about neighborhoods and cities and communities, we have to think holistically about treating the whole city, the whole issues, which means we can't be fragmented. Social justice leaders can't be crying out loud in the wilderness while the EJ movement is over here. Nonprofits within the environmental realm, hey, I'm a part of the council, I've seen it. We all think my rating system is the leader. We can get it done. We're making it happen globally. Another system is coming in that's thinking beyond. We're more innovative. The bottom line is the outcome needs to be a part of where we start. Healthy communities, healthy people for all, and we need to stop being fragmented. We need to come together, and that was my challenge. That was my challenge when I told my story at Greenbelt last year, and they gave me 3 minutes to do it, and Michelle, I'm off my time. But at the end of the day, my challenge is when I stepped into USGBC to launch Greenbelt, I saw a forum and a place. When I transition, I want it to be representative of all. And that's just not nationally, it's a global concern as well.
Thank you, Kimberly. Now, Ray Anderson used to talk about the power of one, and Representative Harold Mitchell from South Carolina is a demonstration of that. He is making these ideas happen for the community in Spartanburg, South Carolina. So can you please share a little bit with us about your transformative vision and how these ideas of connectedness and putting the community at the center of the solution are getting it done?
Well, I think first and foremost, looking at the Spartanburg project, you would have to put it in perspective with Flint, Michigan. We saw this year with Flint, Michigan, the anger, the distrust that the community would basically have with local government officials and industry. So that's where I would say to start the Spartanburg story is that we had 2 Superfund sites, 4 brownfield sites in this community that was a total devastation, medically underserved, inadequate housing, you name it, it was there. Building the coalition between the community and our local government, we took a $20,000 EPA small grant and leveraged that today into close to $300 million in redevelopment that was driven by the community as a major stakeholder with the local government and industry. And we took that opportunity to see all the ills that was in the community because first and foremost, before you can get to the sustainable, you have to really dive into the problems that were there within that community, empowering them. So we were able to address our healthcare issues to where today our federally qualified center that we received at first, we've expanded that into about 7 centers in 3 counties, treating the migrant healthcare in the upstate to where now we're about to look at resiliency within those facilities with solar. Those sites that we had that were impacting the community, I introduced a bill last year, a tax credit bill for renewable energy, geothermal and solar. So we're able to take the landfill itself, which according to the state did not exist. And this particular landfill had 99.9% of everything going into it less than 50 feet from the residents who were on well water. So that impact, in itself was very devastating. But today we have that to where Duke Energy, Grow Solar are looking at developing a 3.5 megawatt site on that landfill and taking the other sites that we have there, the impacted sites, and Tiger Woods and the foundation and Bo Welling, they're developing a urban course to where instead of having a golf clubhouse, we're using Bridgetech, one of our STEM academies in South Carolina. This academy actually developed the first human android that was unveiled 2 weeks ago with the White House Clean Energy Summit there in South Carolina. So we're using that to actually train a generation to move into this sector on hydroelectric, wind, and solar there at the facility. And so we know that 0.001% of African Americans are even in this field. So we feel that this would be a great opportunity to take the environmental impact and turn it into an opportunity for training for young kids to move into this profession. Because we've seen too, as far as a lot of our job training initiatives, we took a public housing complex on Hope 6. With that training, we were able to move some people that had never worked before, got their training. They actually became homeowners after getting their certification. So this is something that we know that if we train, give someone an opportunity, the outcome, as what we saw there with these young ladies, it's like, if I've never had a job before, now I'm a homeowner, I'm working, it trickled throughout the actual project itself. And so there's a lot to this, and as Kimberly stated, with 3 minutes it's hard to explain the Regenesis story, but this is one that has drawn attention, and EPA has created a collaborative problem-solving model off of this to where the Koreans, the Taiwanese government sent in some professors to study the project to go back to Taiwan and teach the Environmental Protection Agency of Taiwan of the collaborative problem-solving effort that we were able to do there in South Carolina.
Thank you very much, Representative Mitchell. Thank you. And we are all going to be presenting a working group session this afternoon, so we'll have an hour to engage with the audience. So we hope that y'all will find us in the hallway and that you'll come to the session this afternoon so we can dive even deeper into some of these incredible solutions. But you've heard that putting lower income communities at the center of the financial model is critical, that we've got to come together, and that the power and the capability to do that, to support communities, is here in this room. And you heard from Representative Mitchell a story of how it is happening on the ground in Spartanburg, South Carolina. And making one project happen is a powerful example. It is a light on the hill. But to be able to really build community power and leverage the growth in clean energy and sustainability to build wealth and to empower communities economically takes scale. So Trenton, what does it take to go from an exotic example to an innovative solution that scales with the market?
Sure. One of the things we always said in banking, innovation gets you promoted, exotic gets you fired. And so we're trying to stay away from exotic. And really from an innovative standpoint, what we're trying to do is just combine pieces of technology or financial technology that's out there in the marketplace and just put it together in a new way. And so when we think about sort of how do we expand the opportunities, I think the biggest part of scale is how do we create the mechanisms for aggregation. And that's really what it is. Instead of looking at what is the individual credit score, what is the individual ability of single customers to pay, we're looking at sort of how do we take that sort of single customer and put them to larger pools and look at sort of how do we evaluate the pool, which allows us to scale. So we have greater access to capital, we'll have greater access to projects, we'll have greater buying power. There'll be better opportunities for businesses to participate. And so for us, scale is about how do we bring these pools together in a way that minimizes some risk, that brings in other forms of capital, whether it might be impact capital, it might be some of corporations who are looking to invest for their corporate sustainability. So the idea is how do we pool pool the capital and the participants together in a way that allows us to move projects forward.
Thank you, Trenton. Now, building scale also means building market capacity. And as we build market capacity, Kimberly, you have already laid down that representation matters. So tell us what we need to do.
At the council, we've been all about movement building. And I think the biggest thing is the power of the network effect, building networks. And really that means who are the anchor institutions within communities that are trusted, that can change the conversations from not just the technical outcomes of success, but can really make it relevant, like Representative Mitchell said, to the people in their lives. That means how do we collaborate in a way that brings those representatives and those folks from those communities to the tables as leaders, not reacting to what we're bringing to the table, but really taking a step back, listening, and figuring out who are the ones that actually are getting things done. At the council, we always talk about performance, how we get things done. Everything that we do leads to an outcome. Who in the social justice movement, who in the environmental justice movement can we come together, leave our vertical definitions of success behind and figure out how do we collaborate and create the network effect where we're thinking in terms of not 1 to 10, 10 to 100, but how do we build scale at a broader level with common language, common definitions of success. At the council, we've been talking about plus 20%. That is a 20% growth over 5 years in underserved communities. It's not a local outcome, it is a global focus. We want to partner with WGBC, we want to partner with green building councils. Nationally, we want to look across organizations. We want to say it's not just LEED. It's not just your system, but what do these communities need? How do they define it? And how do we collaboratively come together to create the network effect and create a movement of folks? Our success came because we rode the backs of people who were passionate about change. How do we take those successes and figure out how to create that same network effect of people who are passionate, who are advocating for healthy communities, and bring it all together to create scale? And we need good examples of those success, not at the innovative level, not at the cutting edge level, but at the level where everyone can participate. That means we have to come to the table with a clean slate, not with things already prejudged, things on how, and action items in which we think can take us there, but with everyone at the table with self-interest behind what is the definition of success for networks.
Now, Representative Mitchell, I've got one more question from you, and then I'm going to go to the sidebar and hopefully have time to take one question from the community out there in the world. But on this theme of how do we replicate success? How do we build market capacity? How do we create financial scale to drive investment? And ultimately, how does the promise of the clean energy economy to underserved communities go beyond work to building wealth? For people who are here today who want to take the lead, who want to be a good local partner, what do you recommend that people do in taking away from the successes, from the challenges of the work that you're driving forward in Spartanburg to replicate that elsewhere and to start building a market that's delivering benefits to the communities that we seek to serve?
Okay. I think it's a simple solution that Kimberly just stated. Many of the groups are already in place. And I think taking some of those best practice models, such as what we were able to do in Spartanburg, it's one that calls our legislature to take a second look, because in the beginning, talking about clean energy, renewable energy was something in South Carolina, a red state. This administration, no one wanted to hear anything. But when you can come up with concrete examples and impact, that drove our legislature to change its mind and start looking at policy in order to help move and usher this forward. The kinds of initiatives and incentives for developers to actually come in and implement this into the community. I think personally it's a simple solution, but it's just one that we have to listen and be willing to sit at the table and engage in.
Thank you. Folks at the sidebar, we've got time for one question from the community.
Thank you. I'm aware, actually, to Kimberly's point about partnerships, I'm aware of one company so far, Patagonia, that's actually taken steps of investing in a community solar fund. And actually, it was from one of their finance guys, right? They considered it to be a good investment by the business. I'm just curious, for the people in this room, you're sort of putting the call out there for them. So what's the call to action for them? Are there things that they should be looking for in a potential partner? Where should they look? Are there geographies? How can they get involved, I suppose, and how can they scale it?
Okay, the panel has nominated me to answer this question. So I would share a couple of thoughts. Number one, you have to look at what assets do you have to contribute and where are you working. Start at home. For any large company or large employer, you've got a footprint nationally or internationally, and think about your neighbors. How can you be a good neighbor and extend the sustainability mission that for the most part has really been focused around environment and economics, because it's been hard to put metrics around the people piece. But start at home. Think about what you can bring there. Do you have a giant rooftop, an underutilized a piece of land? Do you have a parking lot so that you could not only help to meet your own corporate sustainability goals by developing solar, but how can you create an opportunity for your neighbors, in many cases to your lower income employees, to start saving on their electricity and give them the just opportunity to purchase their energy from a source that isn't making their community sick, typically at a much higher rate. Because for those of you who don't know, I imagine this has probably been part of Verge too, that in America today you can almost predict your lifespan by your zip code. And that would be one place. And then if you're buying RECs, for instance, and you're thinking about additionality, if you have foundation or social funds that are part of your marketing budget, think about how you can help to use your scale, your capacity, your expertise to help to catalyze what is a growing movement in energy equity, sustainability, social justice. And lastly, as we wrap up our panel, I would encourage anybody here today who is inspired by what you hear from the panel, who has been thinking, how can I begin to build community power? How can I be a part of seeing through the promise that clean energy and sustainability has to help really create more economic justice, economic opportunity, economic empowerment for a more diverse community of people, to find us in the hallway, find Trenton, and talk about financial innovation and how we create models that scale. He has done it before, he will do it again. Find Kimberly. Talk about movement building. How can we use platforms like this to better connect and help to support nascent community movements? Find Representative Mitchell. Talk about how we can do more in Spartanburg, South Carolina, and talk about how we can create more Spartanburgs. Because as someone who is from the rural South myself, from a logistics corridor that's dependent on manufacturing, not exactly the first place that would come to mind when you would think about regenerative transformation that's creating not just new solar projects, but the very first 3D printed Android model in the country. And come to our session this afternoon. Ask us more questions and help us build more capacity and ultimately build community power. Thank y'all.